Happy 4th of July. So I got a couple funny stories about the 4th of July. Usually in our neighborhood, we have just this crazy display of fireworks happening from all the neighbors, and there's always a ton of parties happening on all the streets, and I love it so much that I prefer to be home on the 4th of July because there's so much going on and people having a great time and barbecues and people getting together with their family and friends, and it's pretty exciting. I think it might be a little bit calm this year because some of my neighbors are gone, and we I have a show to play this tonight, so that kind of puts my attention in other places. But at any rate, when we have these, we used to have these huge parties going on the block, and so a few years ago, uh, we had my bass player buddy Richard Gary was over hanging out with us, and I call him Trey Riche, which Trey is French for um, very, and then Riche rich. So very rich, Trey Riche, Richard Gary, and we have all of our kids going crazy, and the neighbors had their kids going crazy, and then all the people visiting had their kids going crazy. And at one point, we have all of our chairs lined up on the sidewalk, and uh, my neighbor Eric got all the kids, about 20 of them, all lined up with Roman candles. They're all standing in a line, getting ready to shoot off these Roman candles, and I'm sitting in a chair next to Rich Agary, and he's like, "Oh, I don't know. This kind of makes me a little bit nervous." I'm like, you're safe as kittens." And so Eric went along, and he's lighting all these Roman candles to go shooting off, and everybody's standing holding it kind of at an angle to shoot up. Well, the last person in the line was my son Ian, and his wasn't working. And so what he did is he started shaking it like this, and every time he shook it, whatever comes out of the end of this went right under Rich's chair. It exploded. And so, I mean, it just had been moments before that I said, "Oh, you're fine, you're safe as kittens," and all of a sudden there's these fireworks exploding under his seat. And it was funny, and it was a blast, and nobody got hurt. So it was that was good times. Then I don't know if it was the following year, but maybe a couple years after that. Um, Again, we had a bunch of people over here, and our neighbors had a bunch of people, and it was probably the most nuts, out of control amount of people we had in one small space. And so Anthony came over with his wife and kids, and then they brought their nieces and nephews with them, and I think we had some other people over. I don't remember who. And then, of course, our neighbors had a million people over there, and it was getting pretty late at night, and we had a ton of fireworks still left over. And Anthony had brought this grocery sack of fireworks. He didn't even know what was in it. I don't know if it was left over from some of his neighbor friends had come along with him, and they had left it here, and we were just lighting off fireworks just left and right, and we we were going nuts lighting off fireworks. Well, in this bag of fireworks was a mortar, and Anthony didn't know what it was, and I laugh about it now, but at the moment it was pretty intense. And so Anthony had lit this mortar just on the ground. It wasn't in a tube or anything, and like I said, it was pretty dark out, and I started walking towards it to light a different firework, and it exploded, of course, and I felt something hit my leg, the inside of my thigh, really, really hard. And the moment it went off, it was incredibly loud. These things are supposed to be, what, 50, 60 feet in the air? And so I felt that hit my leg really hard. And then I was running around checking all the kids to make sure that they didn't get hit by anything. And Jude was pretty little still. And all these kids, and the neighbor across the street, one of their friends said that their hair was was on fire. And I think something landed on the back of this gal's head and caught her bandana or something on fire. And so we made sure that was okay. But nobody really knew that I had been um, hurt because we were checking on everybody else. And once we knew everybody was fine, I leaned over to Anthony and I said, something's really wrong with my leg. You got to check it out. So we went in the living room and I dropped my shorts. And on the inside of my right thigh, it looked like somebody had shoved a golf ball under my skin. And then it had probably a 5-inch diameter black circle around it. Now the firework did not go into my skin, but it sure felt like it did, and it looked like it did because it was my muscle had knotted up like a golf ball, like instantaneously. And then as the next few days and week happened, it just turned more and more black and purple and green. It like was bruised, really deep bruise in my leg. So once that whole evening had calmed down, and everybody had left, Mary and I were hanging out with our neighbors, and Eric and I both admitted that things had gotten pretty out of control, and it was hard to keep tabs on what everybody was doing. And so we've had more low-key 4th of July events since then, but it was pretty crazy. So those are my 2 fireworks stories. And Mary had sent me this meme a couple days ago. It said, for some of you, this will be your last weekend with all 10 fingers, which is kind of funny because some of you may know the beginning of last December, Mary had lost the tip of her right pinky finger in a recliner accident. She was moving a recliner at her dad's house in South Carolina, and she and Elliot were moving it. And when it popped open, it just took the end of her finger right off. So that's a whole nother story I've talked about many times. So please be careful on your 4th of July. I'm not parenting you. I'm just from experience. So there's that. I do have a kind of a funny story. I'm not really sure what triggered this memory, but sometime yesterday, and Mary and I were driving around, and something just triggered this memory. I don't know what it was, but you guys ever have that happen where you're doing something or see something, and all of a sudden this memory suddenly just pops back in? Well, my grandma Cox, who was my mom's mom, she's since passed away a long time ago. But when I was a little kid, I remember her telling me this story, and it's pretty good. So my grandma Cox, Martha Cox, and her friend Margie Mead were going to the Napa Mall. And the Napa Mall used to be the only mall that was here. That was before Boise Town Square. Boise didn't have a mall. Napa did. So I think it was kind of a destination place for people to go. Anybody remember going to the Karcher Mall as a kid? And in the main entrance was this glass enclosure of a polar bear. Oh, my sister and I love to go see the polar bear. It's a stuffed polar bear or just a made it polar bear, but it was really impressive and huge. And so we liked checking out the polar bear when we go to Karcher Mall. And then upstairs in Karcher Mall was a nice restaurant called the Thoroughbred. All of that to say is that my grandma and her friend Margie were driving to go to the mall. And on their way, they hit and killed a cat. And my grandma lived on a farm, and I don't know what her thinking was, but her and her friend decided that we can't leave this cat just dead lying on the side of the road. Now, most of us might think, why not? But they grabbed the cat and they put it in a brown paper bag and kind of sealed it up. And why they didn't put it in the trunk, but they stuck it on the floor in the back seat of the car. And I thought that was hilarious. So they hit a cat, bag it up, put it in the back seat of the car, go to the mall, do their shopping. Now, who would go shopping and leave a dead animal in the back seat of their car? Apparently, my grandmother and her friend would do this. Not regularly, but that's something they obviously did. So now this would be maybe late 70s, early 80s when this happened. And, I think people, especially in our area, were more comfortable leaving their cars unlocked. Wherever they went, they just leave their car unlocked. So grandma and her friend went shopping in the mall, and when they came out, they noticed somebody rummaging around in my grandma's car and robbing it. And they saw this other woman grab that brown paper bag and take it. She didn't look inside to see what she probably just picked it up, felt it was kind of heavy. And she went into the mall carrying this bag. And my grandma and her friend were totally befuddled. They're like, what? And of course, very interested is what is this woman going to do with this bag that has a dead cat in it? And so they followed her back into the mall. And this lady went upstairs to the Thoroughbred restaurant. So I remember clearly as a kid, I don't think that restaurant exists anymore, but this woman went up the stairs and got seated at a table carrying this brown paper bag with the dead cat in it. And of course, my grandma and her friend walked up behind there, and they got sat at the table as well, a few tables over, just like ordered water or something. I don't think they didn't intend to stick around for lunch. They were just curious what was this woman going to do with this brown paper bag when she discovers there's a dead cat inside the bag. And so this woman has this bag sitting at her feet, looks at the menu, orders food, gets a drink or whatever. And while she's waiting for her food, she grabs this paper bag and sets it on her lap and goes to open it and discovers there's a messed up dead cat in this bag. And apparently she just screamed, and then she fell over backwards. She passed out. And so the staff of the Thoroughbred didn't know why this happened. But they called 911. And so my grandma and her friend just stayed out of the way just to observe everything that was going to happen. And so the paramedics came and they put her on a stretcher, apparently. And they were going to wheel her out. And nobody looked in this bag. But the paramedics grabbed the bag and wrapped it up and set it on her chest, and they wheeled her out of the restaurant and out of the mall. with a stolen dead cat on her chest. And my grandma used to just be in tears, laughing, crying, telling this story. And she loved telling it to the family. And apparently it's true, this whole thing that transpired. So if you guys are thieves, be careful what you're stealing. You might just be stealing a dead cat, apparently. So, that was I don't know what, like I said, something triggered that memory of my grandma telling that story off and on. And what a great story. And, to this day, nobody knows what happened to the woman that passed out and was wheeled out with the dead cat on her chest.